Hello, today I'm going to be showing you how to create your own pixel-perfect text rendering system in GameMaker Studio. Now, there are ways to do this kind of pixel-perfect text rendering using GameMaker Studio's built-in font functionality, but by doing it this way and making your own custom rendering system, you can create some cool effects like what I just showed you, where the text gets written on with the first two characters being scrambled until it resolves into the actual complete message, and a lot of other really cool stuff. Okay, to get started, we'll open up a new blank GameMaker Studio window. And the first step is going to be creating our custom font. So go to the Sprites tab, Create Sprite, and then I'm going to call it SPR Letters. Now, you can do this in whatever pixel editing software you'd like. You can use Aseprite, probably even Microsoft Paint, but I'm going to actually do it right in GameMaker Studio. So the first step is to set the resolution. I'm going to do a 5:7. Okay. And now, we just start drawing. Okay, and there we are. Now for this tutorial, I'll just be doing letters, but you can also add numbers, characters, uppercase, lowercase, and anything else you'd like. Okay, so the next step is we're actually going to edit the room just to make sure our settings are good to go. I'm going to do enable viewports, viewport 0, visible, and then I'm going to do a NES resolution, so 256 by 240. And then for actually displaying it to the window, I'm going to scale that up by a factor of 4. So that's 1028 by 960. So basically the room size is this outer box that you see here. And that's the actual size of like the simulated GameMaker Studio engine. And then within this box here is what the camera is going to look at. And then the viewport property, width and height, is how big it'll actually show up on your screen. So right now, be nice, good size. And then finally, change the background color to white so we can see our text. And now we have everything we need to start creating our text rendering object. So we'll create an object, call that obj text renderer. And then all we need is a draw GUI event. So the way this is going to work is we're going to have a reference of every character that we know how to draw, and then we're going to have the phrase that we want to actually draw to the screen. And we're going to iterate through every well, you'll see in a minute, but basically we'll iterate through each character in the phrase we want to display, and then for each of those characters, iterate through our reference to find what we actually want to show to the screen. So for that, we need a reference of all the letters that we can display. So that's just going to be a string called reference, and it's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, V, W, X, Y, Z. And it's very important this has to be exactly in the order that you have in your sprite up here. Okay, and then we need a reference to our sprite that we'll be using to draw the letters. And doing it like this lets you just swap this out if you want to create another font or something different at a later time. You can just swap this out and it will update all the rest of the code. And then we also need a scale, which I'm going to put to 8. So we're basically like double size letters because our window scale is 4. but that's fine. And that's actually all we need to write our first simple version of this program. I'm going to do this in steps, so we'll just start off with very simply just displaying text on the screen, and then we'll do a write-on effect, and then we'll do the scrambled write-on. Okay, so we're going to create a function called drawLine. And then that's going to need an x, a y, and a phrase. So the x and y is basically the starting point for where we want to draw this phrase, and then the phrase is the actual string we want to display on screen. Okay, so there's something cool you can do in GameMaker Studio. If you press F4, it'll bring up a bunch of common programming functions. So we need a for loop, and the condition we want is string length of our phrase. Now, I think this has something to do with how GameMaker Studio handles strings. We want to actually start this incrementing off at 1 and then go to +1. I don't really know why, but I know it works. And then inside here, we are going to do the same thing, but make sure to change it to a different incrementer. It'll automatically give you I, but change it to J or something. And then for this one, our condition is going to be string length, string length of reference. Okay, and then I like having mine as I++. I think it's the same thing, but I like changing them for some reason. Okay, so now we want to check if the two characters that we're iterating through match up. And the way we do that is if string character at, and then we'll do phrase I is equal to string character at reference J. And what this does is basically gets the character in position I of phrase and then position J of reference. And if they're the same, then that means we want to draw something. So we're going to use the draw sprite extended function because we need to scale it up. So for this, the first reference is what sprite we're going to draw, which is going to be characters, and then the index, which we can use J for that because that was the entire point of using this reference thing, so that it matches up with our sprite with a bunch of different frames. And then it's going to need an X and a Y. But we don't want to just have an X, right? We want each consecutive character that we draw to iterate horizontally. So the way we do this is plus 6 times I. And I'm using 6 because my font is 5 pixels wide. So I want a 1 pixel gap between each of them, but you can adjust this number as you need depending on what your font looks like and how much of a spacing you want between them. Keep in mind though that this will generate a monospace font. You probably can figure out a way to do kerning with this, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. Okay, so then remember that we are drawing this not to the world scale of this thing, but we're actually drawing it to the 4 times scaled up viewport. So we have to put everything that we do here has to be scaled up by that number. Okay. And I should probably actually put this into a full window so we can look at it a little easier. Or rather, I'll put it up here. Okay. There we go. Hopefully that's better. Alright, so the next functions are going to be x scale and y scale. So we just put scale, scale, and then rotation, which is 0, color, which we're going to do C white to give us just like the default coloring that the sprite already comes with, and then 1 alpha so that it's fully opaque. Okay, now we're going to test this out. Draw a line, 0, 0, And then I'm just going to grab a little bit of lorem ipsum. Alright, and let's test this out. Of course, you have to make sure you add the object to the room you're operating in. Okay. So then you also have to add in j minus 1 instead of j. My mistake on that. And then we get the correct lorem ipsum dolor. And yeah, sometimes you get weird indexing errors like this. I think it has to do with just inconsistencies in how GameMaker Studio handles indexing strings. I'm not entirely sure, but in any case, we do have it working now. However, you may notice that there's this weird little gap at the beginning here. It should be going all the way to the upper left-hand corner, and that is because x starts out with 1 because of that same strange indexing thing. So we want to actually add in a -1 on the I here. And then it'll go all the way to the top left corner. And perhaps we would like to do 8 times scale, 8 times scale, so that we have a little bit of a margin, and it shows up in the middle. Okay, nice. Now the next effect is we're going to do a write on, where basically it doesn't show the whole thing at once. It writes the characters one character at a time. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to add a 4th input to our function, which is going to be offset. And then for this, I'll just set it to 5 for now for testing. And then we just add one more condition to our if statement here. Then we say and I is less than offset. Now if we launch that, you can see we only get 5 characters, or 4 characters, I guess. Yeah, because it's a less than, rather than if we do less than equal to, that'll be 5. But anyway, just inclusive, exclusive testing on that. So to give it a little animation, I'm just going to do something very basic here. I'm going to create something called I'm going to go to our object here, add a create event, and then have something called frame counter, which is going to equal 0. And then on every frame counter is going to increment, and then we'll do frame counter, let's say over 3. And there we are. We have a write on effect. Okay. Next up, I'm going to show you how to do that text scrambling function. So in order to control the size of it, I'm going to create another constant, which I'll call scramble size equal 3. Okay. So this function, this if statement tests if we should draw the character at all. But basically, we want to put another if statement inside here, which tests whether or not we're within 5 units of the end of the phrase. So the way we do that is that if I is less than offset minus scramble size, we will do something, and then if not, we will do something else. And then our something else is actually already right here. It's just going to be our regular draw function. Or, sorry, it'll actually be, yes, we'll have it here, and then we'll copy it here. Okay. Alright, so if we put something in here, now one way you could do this is just random 100, And then we do get random text, but it goes kind of fast. So if you want to slow that down a little bit, if you have something that's already going, like frame counter, which I use these kind of frame counter things a lot in my code. I'm not really sure if that's the best thing to do, but it works for me. Something you can do is frame count over 2. And you see we get some randomness. But if we slow this down, like if we do this over 10, you may notice that they're all the same character, because each character is getting the same frame counter input. So one way we can combat that is just doing +J, because that's unique for every character. Or at least not, entirely consistent between them. And now, there we are. Now we can speed this back up again. And then I'm actually going to copy in some more lines of text. So just some more lines of the lorem ipsum dolor thing. And then if you want to delay it getting drawn on, you can do a -20, -40, -60. If we take, frame counter. Really quite strange that it doesn't catch bugs like that in the compiler. Okay, then let's take one final look at the result. Alright, very nice. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you found this interesting, and let me know if you use this in your game.